Sienna God, hello all. Oshta afternoon, good afternoon, and Wado. Thank you for watching. So this is day 3 of reading Black Rednecks and White Liberals by Thomas Sowell. This melodramatic and emotional oratorical style could still be seen in 20th century America. Not only in religious services, but also in politics, both among, this just makes me laugh because of the ridiculousness of it. You know what I'm saying? Both among white Southern politicians of the Jim Crow era and among black leaders of the civil rights movement in the South and community activists in the northern ghettos. By contrast, religious services in colonial Massachusetts developed what has been called the meeting, quote-unquote, meeting and lecture approach, where the, end quote, style of preaching was a relentless cultivation of the plain style, end quote. These, end quote, addresses tended to be closely argued statements of great density, in which Puritans reasoned as relentlessly with their Maker as they did with one another, end quote. This intellectual approach to religion carried over into their daily lives. Even more than most people in their time, they searched constantly for clues to God's purposes in the world. It was with this impulse which led to so many English Puritans to study nature with the extraordinary intensity which played a central part in the birth of modern science. There was a dark side to this intensity as well. The vast majority of the persecutions and executions of women for witchcraft occurred in New England. Quakers did not have the persecuting intolerance of the Puritans, but they too had plain spoken religious meetings, also in contrast to melodramatic services among the rednecks and crackers of the South. The Anglican services were likewise less emotional and dramatic, but Anglicanism in the South was largely confined to the Tidewater region. Catholics too had a quieter service, though more formal than the Quakers, but there was little Catholicism in the South, where even Irish immigrants tended to become absorbed into the Protestant religions, just as the Scots tended to become absorbed into Southern fundamentalist religions. The South was a region lacking the prerequisites for maintaining an educated clergy as required by both Presbyterians and Catholics. Anyone familiar with religious practices among Black Americans today will recognize their clear imprint of the white Southern pattern. Yeah. That's crazy. It was not just the Southern preachers who behaved differently from their counterparts in other parts of the country, so did the congregations. While many of those listening to hellfire and damnation sermons were moved to extreme emotional reactions of fear, confession, and repentance, many others took these sermons as dramatic performances or spectacles, and the young women and men often treated these religious gatherings as occasions for socializing and preludes to romantic encounters later. This pattern too went back to earlier centuries in Scotland, where while some at the camp meetings were quote-unquote groaning, sighing, and weeping for their sins, there was usually also, in quotes, a knot of young fellows and girls making assignments to go home together in the evening or to meet in some ale house, end quote. While the keeping of the Sabbath as a day free of worldly activities and amusements was a common practice in many parts of the United States in centuries past, that was not the practice among the rednecks and crackers of the antebellum South. Southerners, quote-unquote, had fun on Sundays, to the consternation of northern observers, end quotes. One of the strangest sights to a New England man on visiting southern states is the desecration of the Sabbath, wrote a Yankee. In some of the cities, especially if a good number of the businessmen are from the north, the churches are tolerably well attended, there being but one sermon for the day, but even here the afternoon and evening are much devoted to amusements. Another northerner declared that in the South there is no Sabbath. They work, run, swear, and drink here on Sundays just as they do on any other day of the week. Many Southerners did not go to church at all. or did so intermittently or when not distracted by other activities. Again, this was a pattern found among their ancestors in Britain. Among the reasons given by contemporaries for low church attendance among Southerners who was that they often got drunk on Saturday night and were in no condition to go to church on Sunday morning. Black rednecks. Much of the cultural pattern of the Southern rednecks, I believe I said end quote after any other day of the week, but anyway, much of the cultural pattern of Southern rednecks became the cultural heritage of Southern blacks, more so than survivals of African culture, with which they had not been in contact for centuries. Even in colonial times, most blacks on American soil had been born on American soil. This was in parentheses. Even in colonial times, most blacks on American soil had been born on American soil. They kind of make you think that like, I don't know. I don't know if you got this feeling when you're in school and stuff talking about it. But the way that they talk about it, though, it makes you feel as though everyone was like, the majority was born into slavery. They were brought over as slaves and then born into slavery like that. You know what I'm saying? And then so, I don't know. I don't know if that makes sense or not. That's just literally how it felt. And it's totally not true. Moreover, such cultural traits followed blacks out of the southern countrysides and into the urban ghettos. North and south, where many settled, the very way of talking later to be christened quote-unquote Black English also followed dialects brought over from those parts of Britain from which many white Southerners came. Though these speech patterns died out in Britain while surviving in the American South, as such speech patterns would later die out amongst most Southern whites and among middle-class blacks while surviving in the poorer black ghettos around the country. For example, here we go. Where a Northerner said, I am, you are, she isn't, it doesn't, and I haven't, a Virginian, even of high rank, preferred to say, I be, you be, she ain't, it don't, I hain't. So I hain't is I haven't. I was about to say, I ain't never heard that before. These Virginia speechways were not invented in America. They derived from a family or regional dialects that had been spoken throughout the South and west of England during the 17th century. From these same regions, oh, shut the front door. Here we go. I just saw a word that I was just like, oh, God. You know, ask, and people say ax, A-X. Anyway, I just saw that. From these same regions of England came such words as yaller, Y-A-L-L-E-R for yellow, ax, A-X for ask, acrost, A-C-R-O-S-T for across, oof, Y-A-W-L, y'all for you. That's weird. I would have thought it'd be for all y'all. You know what I mean? Bile. Really? I haven't heard that one. For boil. B-O-I-L. Do. What? Oh, excuse me. It's dough. D-O apostrophe. For door. Dis. For this. And dat. For that. Many of these usages have long since died out in England. Okay, I'm literally thinking about all the people that don't like white people, and literally their dialect comes directly from them. I'm just saying, the behaviors come directly from them, right? They don't like them so much that they are them. I'm just saying. Anyways, many of these usages have long since died out in England, though the word chitlins, C-H-I-T-T-L-I-N-S, for hog entrails continued to be used in some localities in England, even in the 20th century. As such usage remained common among Black Americans, but no such words came from Africa. Nor did the holiday Kwanzaa. Yes, please, give it to me. Oh my God. I knew Kwanzaa was a made up holiday. I'm just saying. Which originated in Los Angeles. The slaves' custom of marking their marriages by jumping over a broomstick, a custom resurrected at a posh wedding among blacks in 20th century New York as a mark of racial identity, was in fact a pagan custom in Europe in centuries. Shut up, right? Get the heck out of here with that. Oh my gosh, no. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I have a cousin that could not believe that I was getting married to a white man. And she frickin' jumped a broom at her wedding. Did she know that it was in fact a pagan custom in Europe in centuries past and survived for a time among Southern whites? Oh my gosh. Like, this stuff is mind-blowing and you gotta kind of be ready to handle it, right? Now you can understand why I had to put this book down. And I was just like, because I was livid. I could not believe all of the lies that we were literally living and being told and fighting over and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, so if you didn't catch that, the jumping of the broom, it said a custom resurrected at a posh wedding among blacks in 20th century New York as a mark of racial identity was in fact a pagan custom in Europe in centuries past and survived for a time among Southern whites. Complaints about the improvidence of whites in the South and of their ancestors in Britain before that were echoed in W.E.B. Du Bois' picture of his fellow blacks in 1890s. We've heard a lot about that guy. Probably few poor nations waste more money by thoughtless and unreasonable expenditure than the American Negro, and especially those living in large cities. Thousands of dollars are annually wasted in amusements of various kinds and in miscellaneous ornaments and GEWGAWS. Gewgaws? I don't know. The Negro has much to learn of the Jew and the Italian as to living within his means and saving every penny from excessive and wasteful expenditures. It was not, however, from Jews or Italians that blacks had absorbed their culture. Du Bois's description of the spending habits of blacks in the 1890s was echoed by a contemporary observer, Jacob Riis, R-I-I-S, who said that the Negro, quote unquote, loves fine clothes and good living a good deal more than he does a bank account, end quote. Similar observations have been made by many others over the years inside and outside the black community. For the lower socioeconomic classes among blacks, Gunnar Myrdal's, Myrdals, description of them near the middle of the 20th century still bore a remarkable resemblance to descriptions of Southern whites and their regional forebears in Britain, including, in quote unquote, less resourcefulness, disorganized, in quotes, family life, lax sexual morals, and recklessness, end quote, with tendencies toward aggression and violence. Let me mark this page real fast because I'm going to do a little short video on the brim, right? Slaves weren't allowed to get married, I've been told. So in order to do that, they would do it in secret and they'd jump the brim. It's like, I came from the white people. Oh my God. This is just crazy town banana pants. Oh, Lordy. Okay. Despite a general sympathetic approach to the study of blacks in his landmark book, An American Dilemma, which has often been credited with a major influence on the advancement of civil rights, Myrdal also noted that, in quotes, low standards of efficiency, reliability, ambition, and morals actually displayed by the average Negro, end quote, he observed, in quotes, something of the devil may care attitude in the pleasure seeking of Negroes, end quote, and a general attitude in which, in quotes, life becomes cheap and crime not so reprehensible, end quote. Like other observers, Myrtle tended to attribute to slavery such aspects of black culture as, end quote, the low regard for human life, when, and that's end quote, when in fact antebellum whites had exhibited this same reckless disregard of lethal dangers. Yeah, with blowing up them boats and stuff, right? Let's race those boats. Let's see. And so had their ancestors in Britain. Unlike many others, however, Myrtle also recognized the influence of the Southern white culture on the culture of blacks, pointing out that, in quotes, the general Southern pattern of illegality maintained this low regard for human life, end quote. He also noted that, in quotes, the so-called Negro dialect is simply a variation on the ordinary Southern accent, end quote. That religious, in quotes, emotionalism was borrowed from and sanctioned by religious behavior among whites, end quote. In the South, and that the, in quotes, Negro trait of audaciousness is characteristic of white Southerners too. He quoted black scholar, in parentheses, and later statesman Ralph Bunche, Bunche, in quotes, white Southerners employ many of the defense mechanisms characteristic of the Negro. They often carry a chip on the shoulder. They indulge freely in self-commiseration. They rather typically and in real Negro fashion try to overcome a feeling of inferiority by exhibitionism, raucousness in dress, and exaggerated self-assertion, end quote. Although Dr. Bunche presented these as parallels historically, it was of course the Southern whites who first had these patterns, reflecting patterns among their ancestors in Britain in much of the literature on black culture. However, the supposed influence of slavery has been far more sweepingly assumed, and the cultural influence of white Southerners and their forebears in Britain largely ignored. Attempts to derive the black manner of speaking from slavery and its parallel among whites as an influence from black speech were answered by a Southern historian who asked, end quotes, from whence came the drawl of the people of the upper Great Plains and of the Blue Ridge, Smoky, and Cumberland Mountains, who have had little or no contact with the Negro. Exactly my point. How are they talking the same? Because it didn't come from Africa, honey. It came from, come on. Anyway, another cultural historian of Southerners aptly observed that, in quotes, Southerners, white and black, share the bonds of a common heritage, indeed a common tragedy, and often speak a common language. However, seldom they may acknowledge it. Man, this gnat. I don't want to kill him. I want to catch him. Half a century after Myrtle, another study of racial attitudes noted, in quotes, the intimidating ethnic style of many underclass black males, and end quote, and noted that nearly half of all murder victims in America were black, and that 94% of them were killed by other blacks. Many of these killings were due to gang members who killed for such reasons as, end quotes, because he looked at me funny. And here's another quote, because he give me no respect. Okay, end quote. And other reasons reminiscent of the touchy pride and hair-trigger violence of rednecks and crackers in an early era. The neglect and disdain of education found among antebellum white Southerners has been echoed not only in low performance levels among ghetto blacks, but perhaps most dramatically in a hostility toward those black students who were conscientious about their studies, who are accused of, oh my gosh, yes, that's right, I was accused of this in school. They're worried, okay, so conscientious about their studies, who are accused of quote unquote acting white, a charge that can bring anything from social ostracism to outright violence. So much attention has been paid to questions of ability that few have looked at cultural attitudes. One of those who is black professor and best-selling author Shelby Steele, Stele, who, in quotes, sees in many of these children almost a determination not to learn, end quote, even though once outside the school and in their own neighborhoods, end quotes, these same children learn everything, end quote. He drew on his own experiences teaching at a university. For some years, I have noticed that I can walk into any of my classes on the first day of the semester, identify, oh, I gotta end it.